Okay, so today I'm going to do a string change on this mandolin. This is how I do it. So I use two tools. I use a string winder. I find the string winder makes it a lot easier to pull the strings off quickly. And I also use these clippers. I bought these clippers specifically so that they have the clipping end here. I find that's easier, and I don't go clipping the actual meat part of the string. I just clip the end off. I just bought these I think I bought these at a Napa. So when I change strings, I take off only two at a time. And the reason I do that is because on mandolins, this bridge floats. And so if you take all the strings off, you'll float the bridge along, and it'll mess up the intonation. If this bridge goes back and forth, it'll mess up the intonation of the instrument. And I don't like setting intonation that much. So go ahead and take these off. Take the second one off while I'm up here. Now I like to put my instrument on something soft. I have this quilt here, or I'll use an old bath towel, and I prop the neck up with one of these cheap neck props that you can buy. They're not the best because they're not terribly stable, so they tend to be they tend to move around a little bit. Sometimes I'll just do it on my lap. I'll just hold the thing in my lap and take the strings off that way. I'll go ahead and unwind these guys. Now, depending on the tailpiece you have, that's going to determine how you take the strings out of the tailpiece. Now, this tailpiece has a style where the hooks are at the back, so I can just kind of pull them out like this, and they slide right out. So I just unhook them and slide them out. Now I use this opportunity to kind of clean off the fretboard, and you can do various methods of cleaning. This fretboard is pretty dirty, but I'm not going to clean it up too much. I use a thing called Gorgamite to clean off the frets, and that seems to work out pretty well for me. So we'll go ahead and wipe the fretboard off with a lint-free cloth. Get it nice and clean. I actually use this opportunity to clean off the headstock a little bit too, because it gets a little dusty. And we go ahead and take our strings. I'm using D'Addario EXP 74s. I use tons of different strings, it doesn't really matter. For some reason, I always like to start on the heavier side. I'm sure there's a scientific reason for that, you know. Maybe there's less tension or something, I don't know, but it just seems like that's what I always do. Heavier side meaning the thicker strings. Now, when I string a mandolin, I always string them in pairs, and I always start on the inside string. So I'll slide through the tail piece here, hook onto the cleat back here. And this one's a little tricky. Let's see if we're hooked in there. There we go, get that hooked in there nice. Now what I do is I hold my hand with the string in my hand like this. I have about a hand's width up off of the fretboard. I poke through the tuning peg. Now, on a mandolin, you always want to have the string going up the inside of the tuning peg and wrapping around, right? You don't want to come in from the other way. So I bring this in here, bring the tuning peg over so that the hole is parallel with the nut here. Still holding tension. The trick is you have to hold the tension on or it'll come off of the cleat at the bottom. So I take the string here, and I'll zoom in on the next string. I take the string here, crimp it this way, I bring it underneath the main part of the string. Okay? And then I knot it over like that. I think some people call that knotting. I've tried a bunch of different ways to string and tie off mandolin strings, and this one seems to work the best. The biggest problem I have with mandolins is that they just go out of tune terribly. So once I have it crimped over and knotted, and I start to wind, and what I do is I put my thumb down here while still maintaining tension, and I try to get the string winding underneath the hole. Okay? I try to make it so that I'm not crossing over previous windings. And once it starts to get tight enough, I actually move the string back here into the correct slot. All right, still holding on with this with my right hand. I line it up on the nut. Okay, and I start to bring it up to pitch. What I'm doing here is I'm going on the 5th fret of the D string, and if you count up, that's actually a G. So D, E, F, G. So that's an octave up from what this low string should be. All right, now what I do is I start stretching the string. I just pull it up with my thumb a little bit. See how it's gone low? I bring it up to pitch again. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm just kind of trying to get this to seat. All right. You can see my stretches are causing less. All right, and again, I just want to get it close. The reason I do that stretching is because I want the string to stretch out, and I want it to take a nice set so that when I put all the strings on this mandolin, I don't have to go crazy tuning it. That was a trick I learned on guitar years ago. When I would put new strings on, it would drive me crazy because it would take forever to have them come into pitch. Well, the trick is stretch them. Let's go ahead and put the next one in. Okay. Clip it on the cleat. And the tailpiece. This tailpiece, like I said, this tailpiece is kind of tricky because these cleats are really close. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this headstock and show you what I'm doing exactly. Okay, so we're zoomed in. We have the outside or G string here. Have to work around the camera a little bit, no problem. Did we get it through the hole there? Hey, we did. All right, same technique as before. I actually saw a really good video by Martin Guitar Factory on how to string a guitar. This guy was really good. He actually took all the guitars off a guitar, now you can do that, and then he set all of these tuning pegs up so that they're parallel to the nut. That makes it really easy. All right, so a little bit of detail, holding tension with my right hand. Twist the free end around, tuck under. Okay, tighten it up a little bit, and then twist it back over the top. Okay, and you'd be surprised at how well that keeps a mandolin in tune. I've tried a couple of different techniques. I tried a technique where I would just rub 3 or 4 or turn 3 or 4 wraps around the peg. I had a guy teach me this a bunch of years ago, and this is the most reliable way I've seen to to wrap a string. Now you can see it's starting to come unwrapped a little bit, so we'll just kind of straighten things out a little bit. But as you get tension on it, it tightens up pretty nicely. And the funny thing is, you don't need to have tons of wraps around the peg. You know, 1, 2 wraps is fine, as long as you have it knotted off at the end. Now it makes it a little bit difficult to pull the string out when you're done and you're changing, but for me, the price is worth it to have the thing stay in tune. Now I've got this one in here, and I've got it lined up on the nut, and I've got it lined up on the bridge, and we can start bringing it up to pitch. Same thing, start bending it, stretch. And that's where these winders are great. And you can certainly do this by hand, but I don't know, you can't beat it. You know, winder's not that expensive, and it's worth it. All right, let's go ahead and clip off the ends. What I do is I'll bend this thing down one more time, sneak in from the side. Now the trick with clipping off these ends, you want to make sure you don't clip the actual strings. You just want to clip off the ends. That's why I like using these flush clippers. Let's get in here nice and close. Off it goes. And this one, let's go ahead and bend him back over. Use the clippers to get underneath here. Done. Okay, so I've done the low strings. I flipped the mandolin around so that the string tuning pegs are closest to me. I'm going to work on the higher strings now. Okay, well, I just noticed that I put the wrong strings in the A position. I put the E string in the A position. So I just went ahead and unwound it, and I'm stringing them back up in the E position. Okay, so we got all strung up. Now let's go ahead and tune it to pitch. And I just use a just use like a little pitch pipe. Do the same thing again. And you can certainly use an electronic tuner to do this as well, but I just had to. trick that I learned tuning mandolins. Let's go ahead and get this D in here. So one thing that I learned, I think I learned this from a Sam Bush video on how to tune instruments. You always come from below. So like, say this guy is sharp. So your instinct would be to just lower it. But that's not how I do it. Usually what I'll do is I'll undershoot. I'll go below the note that I'm looking to get. So I'm trying to get a D. That's too high. And then I'll always come up from below. And I think the reason is that if you loosen an already tight string, there might be some binding here in the nut. And you can minimize that. You can put a little bit of graphite dust or something from a number 2 pencil into that nut. But even after you do that, I still find that if I come from a high pitch and go down to the correct pitch, as soon as I play it, it goes flat. So I almost always, well, I always go below the pitch and then tune up. Always tune up. Especially on the second string. So the way I tune a mandolin, if I have an electronic tuner, I tune the first string to pitch on the electronic tuner, and then I tune the second string by ear. I've tried tuning them both to an electronic tuner. It just never sounds good to me.
Alright, stretch these guys out again. And the first 2 times, I basically stretch them until I stop changing pitch. The other thing I do, I don't use a capo with a mandolin. If a string is sharp, I always stretch it first.
So like if I put a capo on a guitar, oftentimes when you capo up a guitar, it sounds sharp. A lot of people retune their guitar when they put a capo on. Before I retune, I put the capo on. Or sorry, they retune after they put a capo on. Before I retune, I put the capo on, make sure there's no buzzing, and then I stretch all the strings, because you just never know if you've got a little bit of extra tension on the other side of the capo. And as soon as you start strumming, guaranteed, you're going to knock that thing out of tune. So I stretch them a little bit, just a little bit, and then I check them for tune.
And I tune up them. Alright, stretch these guys out.